I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time. Hello, and welcome to Women Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James, and I'm very honored to get to introduce you to extraordinary women. In fact, women who have come from ordinary backgrounds or ordinary experiences and have created extraordinary lives. They have stepped into their passion, they've stepped into their power, and I'm thrilled that you get to meet them. You know, I really believe this is the time for women awakening on the planet, that this is the time for us to emerge because we are necessary. I think our heart, our nurturing nature, our brilliance, our caring and kind hearts are needed to create balance here. So we do these once a week. We are on Spotify and iTunes, iHeart, Spreaker, Amazon, YouTube. Please just go in and subscribe and then come back and meet an extraordinary woman every week. So my guest today is someone I recently met. Her name is Nadine Bridges, and she's dedicated herself to working with and advocating for vulnerable communities for over 20 years. She is committed to racial equality, social justice, and anti-oppressive movements. She has been a professor, director, counselor, mentor, volunteer, and activist. As the director of Rainbow Alley, an LGBTQ youth serving organization, she worked tirelessly to ensure that youth that she served were protected, they were seen, and they were heard. Before taking on her new role as the first Black and woman executive director of One Colorado, the state's leading advocacy organization dedicated to advancing equality for LGBTQ Coloradans and their families. She was the community health division manager for Boulder County Public Health. So I'm going to say this with a smile on my face because it says in her bio, in her free time, she is a professor of the University of Denver's Graduate School of Social Work. This is amazing. Teaching classes in power, privilege and oppression, disrupting privilege, community leadership and organizing, and social justice and ethics. She also professionally mentors former students and colleagues. Nadine, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Every time I hear my bio, I'm like, my goodness, I'm tired.
Well, yeah, and you're so young. You know, I mean, you'd be expecting some older person sitting in the seat, and here you are. So,
well, you know, that's the melanin in the skin. You know,
hey.
I mean, I'll be 46 in January, which is still young, but yeah, you know, it's been a journey. It has been a journey. Like a kid from the projects who, you know, definitely has been told through the journey that, you know, why I remember when I was in high school, two things. One, I was moving from Massachusetts to West Virginia so that we could move closer to my great grandparents, so that we could know them better. And I remember going to the registrar's office to ask for my transcripts, and you know, my GPA at that time was like a 3.35. And I didn't understand GPAs. I didn't know what that meant. And so I remember asking the secretary, like, well, is this good? And she was like, for you, it's all right. But it was how she said it. It was dismissive. And so I didn't know, you know, then that, you know, that was actually really good. It was really good at the time. And then when I got to graduating, I had a counselor tell me, you don't need to apply to college. You should just go and be a secretary. And those are 2 points in my life where I could have let him bring me down, or send me in a different way or not care about my grades, but it didn't, you know, it didn't happen. You know, I was the first one to go to college and the first one to go to grad school. And now my nieces and nephews who are, you know, the youngest is 17 and the oldest is 22, are all on their own paths, which is a big jump since almost 20 years since I was in school that they're finally doing it. So I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of the opportunities and the mentors that I've had on my way. I'm actually proud of the obstacles and getting over them. And I just want to do that for everybody else.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for sharing that, because I really love having our viewers understand where people came from. But I want to tell you that something that struck me when you were sharing was that this happens so much to people of color and to
Yeah.
women.
Yeah.
It's like, expect the lowest common denominator bar for yourself.
Yeah.
Don't think you can go here. Don't think that this is for you.
Yeah.
And I love every time I hear a story like this, I'm like, yes, one more got up, one
Right.
more said yes, one more
Right.
report. So this makes me really happy because I grew up on welfare and all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff, and they were like, just get a job and take care of yourself because you're not going anywhere. So I love this. So I want to talk about
Yeah.
your passion for the LGBTQ community.
Sure.
I mean, because everything you've done, when I look at your resume, has involves that. So tell me why that's important to you and how you got involved.
Well, and I would say later in my career, right? So I mean, when I didn't come out until I was 30, so almost 15 years ago. And when I started, I worked with undocumented and first generation families, and then with DACA. So I helped young people, first gen students and undocumented students get to and through school. And through a series of events, I landed at LGBTQ youth center. And it really, when you see young people um, who are unapologetically who they are, whether that's transgender, non-binary, gender expansive, or LGB in some way or form, and they are unapologetically themselves, and the courage that they have to like, in middle school to be who they are, even when the you know the the environment around them does not allow for it to be safe. It created an opportunity for me to be better around the work that I was doing, and to recognize that not only am I here to serve young people who are the future, who really are the keepers of our future, right? But I also have a due diligence as an adult LGBTQ person to lead the pathway and to create the footprints for our young people to follow. I think, Cynthia, I've said this to you before, that the great thing about being LGBTQ is that we're not a monolith. We're literally representative of every identity, ability, political ideology, race, religion that's out there. So my work is always centered around racial equity first, and LGBTQ that intersects that, because I think we do have an opportunity to traverse many communities. When I left Rainbow Alley and went to public health, one of the programs that I oversaw was very much so connected with LGBTQ youth again. And I had no idea that I was going to come back to this. If it wasn't for community members who said, please apply to be the executive director of One Colorado, I'm not sure that I would have ended up back specifically in the LGBTQ world, but I'm so glad that I am. I think that these are difficult times. There's a lot of intentional political power moves and attacks on the community. And if I can be a part of making, Colorado in particular safe for LGBTQ communities to thrive and families to thrive, I'm going to do that. And it's also going to create space for Black and Brown, Indigenous, people of color, Asian folks to thrive as well.
Yeah. Well, and I'm eternally grateful because I mean, you would have to be blind and not to see what is happening in our world and in our
Right.
country. And I love that you talked about the young people, because they do carry the legacy. I mean, they are the legacy that is going to take us into the next place. If we don't love and nurture and care for them, then what the heck are we thinking about?
Exactly.
But I want to talk about the fact that that here are these young minds whose brains haven't even totally developed,
Sure.
are being told they don't matter, being
Right.
told that they're in danger, being told that they're wrong. And so the terror and the upset has up leveled suicide rates and all kinds of things with these young people. And I just want to talk about the processes and the things that are available for these
Yeah,
kids, their parents who are watching their kids struggle, who are clueless.
absolutely. I mean, I think, it's so interesting because, as you know, the media has portrays communities, especially vulnerable populations, not always in a positive light, right? And so when you are deemed as other, and then also not presented in a positive light when it's talking about mental health. One of the things I always say about whether it's mental health or behavioral health issues is that it's not because the person is a part of the LGBTQ plus community that they have maybe behavioral health and mental health problems. It's because it's a society that deems them as other, that tells them that there's something wrong and they're trying to cope, right? And what I've seen with young people is that, they just want to be, you know what I mean? They want to hold us accountable. They also want to break down boxes. And there are so many opportunities out there for that to happen. I think whether that's just representation, there's so many movies. I was just watching a movie on Netflix a couple of weeks ago, and it's just a normal, beautiful love story. I mean, obviously, identity is a part of it, but not with all the drama or the negatives, messages and stereotypes that are out there. And we need that for our young people, right? I don't expect anyone, heck, I don't even know everything in the alphabet soup identity or any of that, nor do I understand everything. But what I do try to do is give our young people grace, and empathy, and understanding, and also give myself grace to know that I'm just not going to be perfect, right? Um, there's something beautiful when you can see a young person. Well, this is not beautiful, right? Which is that the person is kind of downtrodden and won't look you in the eyes, but you see them. When you really see them, they become a different person. There's a brightness in their eye. There's a pep in their step, or the pep in the way they move. And we have a duty to do that, right? We all deserve that.
And I love what you were saying about that community, that it represents the whole spectrum of humanity in the LGBTQ community, the whole spectrum. And the fact that anybody thinks they can just lump this all together and go, well, this doesn't matter, is just fascinating to me.
Absolutely.
And I think what we are witnessing is more and more people wanting to be involved in social activism, and more people wanting to be involved in community organizations, and more people wanting to step out. I want to talk to you about being a first. Because being a first is a fabulous thing and can carry a weight. So
yes.
So can we talk about that?
I wish I wasn't the first. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm tired of first, to be honest with you, right? I'm not going to compare myself to Serena Williams, but the reality is we got to watch Serena and Venus Williams and the whole Williams family grow up before our eyes and be the first, and the judgment that happens for being Black women, the judgment that happens when it's, when you are curved a certain way or you have dark skin. For me, if that's the good part about being the first, that I can continue to break down barriers like you see other folks out there, then I'm more happy to do so. But it's tiring.
So here's the thing. I've had a lot of firsts in my life, and you are absolutely right about that weight. And the thing that I think about when I hear, oh, they're the first, is like, how come we're so happy that it's a first? How come we're so happy that this person is, why aren't we going, what took so long?
Exactly.
Why, you know what I mean? And I mean, because we watched it with, Serena and her sister. We watched it with Michelle Obama. We've watched it with Oprah and a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, what I do want to say is, I don't love the celebratory part of it, but what I do love is that once that door's open, you can't close it again.
No. Yeah, you're so right. And if we think about it again, like when I started talking with you today, one of the things I said is, and it's still a very pivotal part of me, is someone told me that I would never be more than a secretary. And there's nothing wrong with being an administrative assistant, executive assistant, or a secretary. There's nothing wrong with that. And that was based off of perception. Didn't ask me what I wanted in my life, like what I was going to do. Just made the assumption that it's the only thing I could do. Now other people can see me and at least have a frame of reference of what they can do. I Many young people who are doing incredible things only because they see that I do it. They see that my wife is doing great things, right? And if that creates the space for other people, then wonderful. But I want the doors to be broken down, right? I want those ceilings to be smashed, so that we can. I mean, the best way to have sustainable organizations is to have diversity of thought, and culture. That's the only way that you can actually create something that's going to last. And we have to continue to do that.
Yeah, 100%. So, when you just mentioned your wife, I
Yeah,
want to talk about um, the importance of everyone having equal rights,
sure.
because I really feel like there's some old paradigm that's operating that says because you're this color, you shouldn't have this, or because you're a woman, you shouldn't have this,
Yeah,
or because you're part of the LGBTQ community, you shouldn't have this. And it's like, I don't get it.
right.
And I think a lot of young people are going, what are you talking
Yeah,
about? But I mean, I would just love to hear your take on it, because it's just fascinating to me that we're still living in the 50s.
yeah. It's heartbreaking. I think that I honestly, at this point in age, I keep wondering why we are backtracking so much. And part of that is, I kind of change this a little bit, is that we don't know our neighbors, right? We don't know who's on our block. We only travel in our own circles, and even on social media, the odds are that everybody kind of similarly looks like you and thinks about like you. And when that happens, it allows for unseen things to happen. It allows for minority voices to rise above the collective respect and love for the human condition voices, right? And I really think that that's what's happening, right? Those loud voices who are saying that, Black people should only be this, or women should only be doing this, or they need to be staying at home, married, and with, 9.5 kids and a picket fence. And that marriage equality is not, is only for a man and a woman. Those aren't the majority of the voices, I believe. I believe that there's a majority out there who does not agree with that. And I only hope that they continue to fight so that we do have rights. We cannot, I say this all the time, like we can no longer be complacent. Like if we want to believe in the great democracy that is the United States, then we need to participate and be civically engaged and to hold everyone accountable, from our local dog catchers, to the president of the United States. We have to know our neighbors. We have to communicate with what's happening, understand what our commonalities are, what makes our heartbeats move. And that's the only way that we're going to continue to have rights for everyone. I think about the travel that I do here in Colorado, and I'm in Denver. But when I'm out on the Western Slope, I'm down in Pueblo, their issues are different than my issues, right? I have access to internet in ways that rural communities do not. Clean water is not as an issue here as it is in other areas. Yes, in the city, there are food deserts, but in some of those areas, there are no opportunities to get to the grocery store. No, you have to drive 4 hours to get to a hospital or even to get behavioral health and mental health service. That is unacceptable. And the
Yes.
only way that I understand those things was to get out in the community, to connect with people. We don't have the same political ideologies all the time, but what we do agree with is that we want our communities to thrive, right? And we have somehow missed that connection, that meaning. It's become very much so about my rights, what I want, but not collectively what we need to do in order to create, this opportunity in the United States to continue to move forward in this democracy,
Yeah, absolutely. I was recently with someone who was telling me that she was tired of what was going on in the country and tired of the news. And she was tired of all these things. And she was just going to be comfortable in her little bubble. And I said, your little bubble's in the big bubble.
Right.
So, and that complacency that you spoke of is what got us here.
Yeah.
That we kept thinking somebody else is going to do it for us. And they are, but it's not necessarily what we want.
Right. And I think that, and I don't even think that those folks, you know, I pride myself, especially here in Colorado, as being an unaffiliated voter, and to me, I don't need to have an allegiance to anyone. I want folks to be pro equality and pro justice. You know what I mean? And the only way to do that is to be a little bit more humble, and stop leaning into these the expectation that folks are going to be complacent. You know what I mean? And the expectation that if you only lean into what your party is saying, that's the only way to be successful, right? I think that in our world where we are supposed to be the ones who are moving our civil servants in the way that best serves our country, and the fact that they're moving us is a little scary. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're supposed to be moving them, and the only way we can do that well is to be collective, to connect with each other, to love each other, and not love through strings, right? I think there's a lot of folks who want to be like, if you only behave this way, or if you only believe in this religion, if you only dress this way. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, again, going back to the basics, respect and love for the human condition. What does that mean to thrive in this country? And if my thriving means that it's going to harm you, Cynthia, then that's actually not thriving, right? And that's what we have missed, right? It's become very much so individual. And that is just, it's heartbreaking to me, especially because everything I do is around connection and love and honor and growth. And how do you do that if I'm only the one person by myself doing it, you know?
Well, listen, I vote for you. I know.
I feel that my wife would strangle me if I ever ran.
Okay, how do people find you? Tell me how people find you.
Yeah, you can find me. At One Colorado, www.one-colorado.org. You can always reach out to me there. I'm around, you know, I'm always doing things in community. You were kind enough to talk about my teaching at the University of Denver. I took a step back because this role as executive director has taken up a lot of my time. But I really believe in service. And I give a lot to community, especially BIPOC community members, first generation community members, and LGBTQ folks. So if you just need to talk or you want information, I probably would make you a priority, because that is so important to me. There's too many messages out there why we don't deserve, and I want to create opportunities for for us to see that we deserve to be seen and heard. At all. Just recently, I met with a leader, Dr. Mosby Taylor, and if you don't know who she is, you should look her up. She's absolutely incredible. But she was talking about this idea of peace, and that we all deserve peace, and that it's not, that's it, nothing else. Like, we just deserve to move through the world peacefully, and I think we do deserve that. I've been trying to tell people a lot that I hope the week treats you with gentle kindness, because we deserve it. And we really do. And I am going to be a part of that movement to create that opportunity, so that no one feels unsafe. Now, I know that's a cotton candy land way of thinking, but I'm going to play in cotton candy land because we deserve it. So
we certainly do. And, safety, from my point of view, is the bottom line for every human being.
Absolutely.
So, first of all, I want to thank you for being here. I love talking to you, and I love your brilliance. And I ask my guests the same last question. Yes. This show is called Women Awakening. Mm-hmm. What do you think is the most important thing for women to understand about the importance of their awakening?
Oh. I think that the importance of awakening is having a self-love for yourself, a self-love for yourself, having self-love. We live in a world where we're told we're not good enough. And the more you begin to understand how beautiful you are internally, and externally, and that your heartbeat is full of vibrancy, and authenticity, the better that you're going to be in the world. So
Absolutely. Well, Nadine, thank you so much. I'm so I'm in awe, and I just am glad that I get to be a witness to the expansion and the gifts that you bring to the planet. Thank you so much for being here. So, ladies, I say the same thing to you every week. This is your moment. This is your time. You are a magnificent expression of grace and joy, freedom, light, brilliance, and abundance. All you are being called to do is to step into it, open to it, move through those doors and say, I am here, I have arrived, take notice.